Thank you, Emily. Hi, everyone. I'm Roberta from Booking.com. And today we're going to discuss how to influence as a design manager within an enterprise. In large enterprises, indeed, design managers face unique challenges in influencing decisions and driving the design agenda. So today, starting from my experience with Booking.com, I would really like to discuss with you and hear from you how you structure teams, how you secure stakeholder support, and how do you improve communication between developers, product managers, and UXers. So this session is tailored mostly for early career design managers aiming to increase their influence and leadership within a large company. But if you're not a design manager or coming from another craft, don't worry about it. Like, I'm very curious to hear your way of working and your opinion about the questions. Cool. So before we actually start with the questions, I would like to briefly introduce myself. I'm Roberta, and I'm from Italy, as you can guess from my Super Mario accent. As I mentioned, I'm a design manager, but actually joined the company as a UX designer in 2017. And I have, in total, 14 years of experience in design, and 6 years as a manager overseeing teams of up to 8 people. And my company's mission is to make it easier for everyone to experience the world. And to reach this vision, my team works on helping users booking vacation rentals and supporting hosts in registering their properties with us. And having transitioned myself from an individual contributor role to a managerial role, I'm actually very passionate about the topic of influencing as a designer. I indeed have a large experience working with stakeholders from various crafts, especially with product roles, to shape strategy effectively. Cool, so without further ado, let's actually start with the first question, which is, how do you structure design teams currently? And I'm going to give you some context because not everyone might be familiar with the terminology here. So the way a design team can be structured can be very different and can affect scalability, efficiency, innovation. So I would like to understand how do you structure this, and can be an embedded model. The embedded model is where there is a product team with a product leader, a designer, a copywriter, and then a bunch of developers. And then there is the centralized model, which is where the design team actually works all together in a team, and they have a design manager overseeing that, and is more what we call like an agency style. And then there could be any other option, like a hybrid way, like a mixed setting between the two. So I'm actually curious to hear from you. How do you work in your company? Cool, I see some votes coming. We have a lot of hybrid. That's nice. Anybody wants to share maybe the ones who voted hybrid, which is the majority of you? Or any other option is also fine. I'm Italian, I don't like silence, sorry, so please give me help. Like, what are the pros and cons that you see with the structure you work on? A mic is coming in case anybody. Nice. Thanks.
Hi. I voted hybrid, and this is mostly because with our client wants us in several different projects, but also wants us to do overarching design infrastructure. So this kind of leads to that we're sometimes integrated in the rest of the dev team, sometimes we're our own team, and we had to adapt to a very flexible model of integration.
So do you mean with the client you work mainly embedded, and then when it's like the large, you work more?
Exactly.
Nice.
Exactly.
And what do you see are the pros and cons of this?
The pros are definitely that we don't lose touch with the dev teams. Like, sometimes you can easily drift apart if you're too centralized, that you just become a service unit and you don't actually know, like, the developer experience can sometimes lose it. But the cons are that you sometimes get a little bit pulled on two sides, and there's not enough time to do either thing right.
Yeah, I understand. Cool. Anybody else wants to share? Can be a different model, have a lot of votes. Maybe one with the centralized model. Here you go.
Hi.
Hi.
So in my company, we work with the centralized model. And we are basically actually an independent department. So a design team that is independent. Our decisions are independent of any project team. So the advantage is that we have our own decisions, like we can rule over project teams and we can keep the design system consistent and so on. And one disadvantage is that we belong to several project teams, but we don't really belong to them. So we are working as external partners. So sometimes it's difficult to create Harport so that we really accept it. So.
And do you manage to influence also the strategy in this setting, or is that a bit harder?
It's a little bit harder, but we do also as well. Because the CEO is a design fan, so we end up having a lot of sayings because of that. Because beauty is important in our case.
True. We just saw that. Yeah, makes sense. Nice. Thanks a lot for sharing. Anybody else who wants to share? Otherwise, we can go to the next question. Cool. So just to give you maybe some information about the way we work, the majority of teams in Booking.com, we work with the embedded model because that is where a product manager is the leader of the team, and then there is a very close relationship between product and design. But actually, with my team, we decided together to change to a hybrid model that is basically where the designers remain embedded in their teams. So they still work with the product manager very closely, but they actually own topics, and these topics can span across different teams. And because we work on different platforms like apps, desktop, that means that then for us it's easier to keep consistency on the different platform. So that was the reason why. Cool, maybe let's go to the next question. So how do you mostly gain and maintain stakeholder support for design initiatives? We have different options here: building strong relationship, demonstrating ROI. I'm curious to hear the one that you feel it's very, very important. Cool. Nice, we have a lot of building strong relationships. Nice. Anybody who wants to share what they voted for and what do they see? Yeah, how do you see this is working? I don't see it very well, so raise your hand because there is a lot of light. Maybe somebody that voted building strong relationships. Why do you feel is the most important? The mic here? Oh. Here on the first row.
I think it's important because when you build strong relationships, you understand what do they need from their perspective, their agenda, and then you know which parts to communicate to them. And sometimes when you say oh, this feature, what you suggested, they do suggest design decisions. Sometimes that's annoying, and they say oh, you keep the button there. When you know as a designer that color is not suitable, so you can know their perspective. And actually, you know if you build a strong relationship, you know how to communicate to them if they're a main stakeholder, when their decision is not in there. Egos does play the role. You know how to communicate and how to soothe their ego when you build a strong relationship. And also, I voted for consistent. I want to combine building strong relationships leads to consistent communication. I don't say consistent, precise communication, how to communicate with them. So I say relationships are very important, so you know that person and how to communicate to that person, how to not offend egos, and how to gain support in the future for your desired roles and research budget. So yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. And how do you, maybe just a follow-up, how do you go about it? So when you start a new relationship with a product, person? Like, how do you start?
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
Yeah, so how do you go about it, like building these relationships? What do you do, like as a first step, maybe?
Okay, whenever I change a company, or first of all, I try to see for first 90 days. Instead of just focusing on my work, I try to observe, like, I try to involve myself in as many meetings as possible and try to just sit back and observe who is talking and who has the power in the room mainly. It may be junior person who is influencing. He doesn't need to be like, the highest paid person. And once I understand the relationships, I try to have lunches with them, try to understand their role. Like, it's not personal, but like I try to build a form of friendship with them, know what they do, how they work. And later when I have like an working with them, it would be easy report. They'd be feel comfortable for me to text them separately on the teams, separate catch-ups. So that's how I build the relationship. During that process, I also know not only of their role and what are their like, everyone has a personal agenda when they're saying, so what is their agenda and how can I like make support and build relationships. So that's how I start building relationships before I even like start working with them. So that's how
makes
I do.
sense.
Thank you.
Nice, thanks a lot for sharing. Anybody else who wants to share? Here we go.
Hi, I think there's also, on the building strong relationships, just a practical part to it as well. We work at an enterprise level. There's a lot of competing requirements, a lot of competing people pulling out of everyone all the time. So just build, you would like to think a product manager would always think to involve design, but it can be so competing in terms of what they have to think about and what they have to include in their considerations and timelines. So building strong relationships just it's sort of a practical thing as well, just keeps you in the forefront of their minds, because without a strong relationship, at least particularly at enterprise level, you may be overlooked or forgotten about. It's just the nature of it. There's just so much going on all the time. So it's kind of there's a practical aspect to building strong relationships as well.
Yeah, that's very true, because sometimes like maybe they don't involve us like because they just forget. Yeah, and then we're like, oh, why you didn't involve me in this conversation? So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Anybody else who wants to share? I don't see. Here we go.
Hey. So what we did, because we were the first UX team in our business unit for a very long time. So what we did, we grew on them and we just forced them to love us. So we brought cakes, we brought candies, we organized events, secret Santas, things like that. So we really grew on them, and so they feel guilty now if they forget about us. So that's really our strategy in our business unit. We just force them to love us.
That's a good one. So tips for you, like bring cakes and chocolate. Cool. Maybe anybody else wants to share? Otherwise, we go to the next question. Let's see. Maybe we go to the next one. Cool. So actually, I want to ask you, like, what are the biggest challenges that you face in obtaining stakeholder buy-in? What do you feel like where was difficult for you? Let's see. There is also some online questions that might pop up. Not seeing the value of design. They don't get product design in general. Competing stakeholder requirements. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Not enough time. Politics. That's very true. Lack of maturity. Nice, a lot of answers. Anybody here that would like to share, even if you didn't write, that is fine. Yeah, there.
Hi. So I think the challenge is when there's a lack of alignment in terms of outcomes, what the business is supposed to achieve. If there's a lack of alignment with the stakeholders, then maybe egos, politics, and hidden agendas win.
And how do you go about when you feel, oh, there is lack of alignment? How do you try to act upon it, ask questions?
So I think you need a strong PM for that, someone from the business side who leads to facilitate the alignment.
Okay, sounds good. Nice. Anybody else want to share, I don't know, a different perspective or like building on top of what we just heard? We have ROI. Yeah, maybe in the meanwhile I can share. So I agree with everything that has been said, basically. Like, yeah, we need to build these strong relationships with product. We need to really align on what is the outcome that we want to achieve, what is the goal. A lot of times, like, I just go to my reports and ask, are you clear on why are you doing that? And they're like, yeah, not really. My product managers say, oh, yeah, we want to build this feature. Yeah, but why do we want to build this feature? So that's actually very, very important. I agree with that. Cool, then maybe anybody else wants to share? Yes, we have someone I don't see.
Hello, Roberta.
Hello.
Hey, friend. I think the biggest challenge, especially now, as one of my friends has mentioned, is like design is getting seen more and more as an expense house versus like a cost center versus something that generates revenue. So oftentimes we need to do a better job explaining how findings turns into feature changes, and those changes turned into losses that didn't happen, so that they understand that we actually generate a better product that loses less money, which is essentially the same as making more money.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Thanks for sharing. And it's also connected to a question. I don't remember if it's the next one. No, it's not the next one, but we have a question about it also later. Cool. So how do you mostly facilitate effective communication between design, product, and engineering roles? We just saw like this building relationship is very, very important. So how do you do when it comes to communication? We have regular cross-functional meetings. Votes are coming. A lot of 85 maybe regular cross-functional meetings. Anybody wants to share how they do that? Like, do they see any challenge in this? How do they structure these cross-functional meetings? Okay, nice.
So I said documentation just because it's a lot easier for someone to reference an email or like written down instructions or comments in a code base versus the thing that we talked about last week while getting coffee or the thing that someone brought up in a meeting that no one wrote down. And so the more things are written down and the easier it is to find them in an email or in Slack or wherever, the easier it is for people to be able to reference things, for people to be able to articulate what they actually meant, for them to clarify, and also just in some cases, if you need to catch someone when they're lying or when they're saying like they didn't say something or that they didn't do something, it's a lot easier if everything's written down for everyone to be able to talk about that. So.
And how do you, sorry, a follow-up question. How do you make sure that everybody actually reads this written communication, like documentation?
So I'm really big on like linking to it and making sure that like whenever I talk about something, I'm also referencing the documentation that I use. That way people don't just see me saying write it down. It's one of those, I wrote it down, I'm sharing to you like what I wrote down, why I wrote it down. Whenever people ask me questions, I'm really big on like sending them the documentation and having them add comments, just because I want people to know that I'm not just like coming to them to extract their work. It's like I do care about the process. I do care about the workflow. I'm not just doing this just so that we can all like not do our jobs. So
yeah, sounds good. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else who wants to share? Here we go. Here on the, oh, sorry.
Hello.
Hello.
So I feel that the most effective way of doing it is bringing engineers and QAs to user testings. Okay, so then they'll be able to understand the user's pain. So by doing it, it's easy to communicate and explain our design decisions to them. So I feel that's the most effective way, like bringing them to the user interviews and bringing them beforehand in the discovery as well.
You mean to empathize with the users and with the pain points?
Yes, absolutely.
Makes sense. Nice. There was another hand here on the front.
Hey. So I think it depends on what you mean by like what most effective is, because I think a lot of it is actually based on your intention. So for example, I actually think informal catch-ups are great if I'm trying to evangelize the role of design in a given product. So catching up with people and kind of establishing trust and understanding that I'm a partner. I'm not just somebody here to kind of like change the strategy or push an agenda or all of that kind of stuff. That's really effective. If I think it is about trying to show process, I think documentation is really helpful because I can kind of outline things. Regular cross-functional meetings is obviously really useful when you need to ensure that you understand you're on the same page with engineering, you're on the same page with product. So I think it's all of them. It just really is contingent on what is the intention behind the communication and how you're trying to establish trust with your given stakeholder.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I agree. Like it's all of them depending on the actual context. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Cool. Let's go to the next question. Yes. And maybe like connected to that, what do you think is the most important best practice for advocating for design decisions within a product teams? Also, we saw like building relationship, collect data, but in this case, if you really want to push a change, maybe a design system change or any other that maybe it's hard to do, what do you do? Nice. Understanding business goals. Anybody wants to share here while you vote? Why they think so, and how do they do?
And I voted for understanding business goals because I had the talks before as well that in the end, we want to build nice design and nice customer experience so that the customers keep coming back. And that in the end, the goal of most businesses is just to make revenue, right? And I think that's often what I notice in design. That's the missing link between we need good design, not just because of good customer experience, but then in the end, understanding what kind of business goals that leads to, whether it's customer retention, a lower cost of customer acquisition, and higher customer loyalty. And having those business goals in mind really helps to like speak the other person's language, basically. And the same with talking to engineers as well, like having their tech goals in mind also to really understand the other people's objectives, and that helps them to really communicate your goals and your needs.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I feel we also heard from the talks yesterday, like really speaking the language of the business, understanding what are we trying to achieve also from a business perspective. That really helps like to justify our proposals. Anybody else who wants to share? Here we go.
I voted build relationships because I found out relatively early that if I don't have the relationships with the people who have the information about all the other things, they're not necessarily going to tell me or even think to tell me. So a lot of the time, our team didn't understand the business goals or didn't have the data or didn't know about the tech limitations, even though we tried to ask people. Because when new things arose, we weren't in the loop necessarily because we were outside of it. So building those relationships and having people remember, oh, we definitely need to tell these people too, has had immense impact on us.
Yeah, makes sense. Also building trust with them, so that they can actually come to you as a
exactly.
partner.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. So maybe for the sake of time, let's go to the next question. And I'm curious to hear, maybe you probably have a design manager or a manager of your own. Looking ahead, how do you see the role of a design manager evolving within an enterprise? Becoming more strategic, like staying the same, focusing more on team management? Anybody who wants to share? Have a lot of becoming more strategic. Peter? Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I've been working very closely with the design manager for quite a few years, and I kind of consider her kind of right hand, as well as the tech lead on the other side. But I think that working on the product strategy together is super important, and sometimes I think that the designers can have better strategic mindset and look a bit further and not be so focused on the details all the time. There's a time for everything, so be more strategic, look on the long term and maybe on the long-term business goals. And I think that's going to be extremely useful to work like that.
Yeah. And how do you go like knowing this and being more strategic? How do you go about it?
Maybe sparring and collaborating closely on for example, a product strategy, and in being very inclusive on, especially make sure that the design manager and the designers are also involved in that.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, a lot of time I hear like, oh, but this is not my role, it's actually the product manager role, but I actually feel there is a lot of overlaps and things really start to change when you actually build this relationship and you go more.
Can I just comment on that?
Sure.
I don't think it's the product manager's role to create a strategy. It's the product manager's role to facilitate it. So it needs to be cross-functional for it to be successful. So maybe the product manager facilitates it, but it should be a shared decision and a shared work between, cross-functional basically.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, I agree. Cool, anybody else wants to share their opinion? I cannot really see. Otherwise, we go to the next question. Yeah, let's go for it. So yeah, we actually talk about how the design manager role is evolving, and how do you see? Maybe let me maybe elaborate on what is my opinion there. So I feel becoming more strategic, like following up on what you just said. Also, like I feel like building this strong relationship with product allow us managers to create opportunities that then we can give to our reports to actually grow. So I feel a lot of impact can come from becoming more strategic, also on people management as well. So, and what benefits or challenges do you foresee with these changes? Do you have any opinion on that? Designers becoming too thinly stretched? Yeah, that's a fair point. What do you think about it? Anybody wants to elaborate? Don't get too sick design, nobody likes change. That's very true, nobody likes change. Anybody wants to share? What do they think? More awareness of the usefulness of design at the big tables. Yeah, I agree. How to build this relationship when most of the team work remotely. Yeah, that's an interesting one. So, yeah, because we talk a lot about how to build a relationship, like getting coffees, like maybe bringing cakes. But yeah, when it's remotely, maybe it's a bit more challenging. You have to be more intentional. So yeah, there you have to maybe schedule a bit more time to do that, and understanding where is the right time to actually schedule a meeting with people. Maybe a recurring meeting can also help. So if you have a recurring time that works remotely, that can also help. And we heard the same yesterday in one of the talks. Nice. So time is up. So thank you very much, everyone, for the participation. Have a nice day and a nice rest of the day. See you.